Charles V was the King of Spain and heir to the Habsburg throne, and the Holy Roman Emperor in the early 16th century. He controlled all of Spain, all of the lowlands, part of Italy, and the Holy Roman Empire. He had the best opportunity to unite all of Europe since the Roman Empire because he controlled so much land. However, he eventually abdicated his thrones to his relatives, the throne of Spain and the Netherlands to one son, and the throne of the Holy Roman Empire to his brother. No one else had the ability to unite all of Europe until the World Wars, and after he abdicated his thrones, Europe was destined to be disunited. Had he united all of Europe, history might have been much different. Now we will have our opening statements.
It was a good thing that Charles V did not unite Europe because it led to competition in Europe that led to more scientific and political advancements that benefited the world, such as mechanized weapons. Also, Europe was so diverse that a unification of Europe would have come with a massive loss of life because of constant rebellions. Charles already faced many rebellions during his reign, such as rebellions from the Protestants in Germany and the rebellions of the Comuneros in Spain. This internal pressure would probably have increased had the entirety of Europe united. There also would have been less religious tolerance because the state would have had more power and Charles was very Catholic and his ancestors would probably not have tolerated Protestants. Science would also not have developed as far because military competition caused many scientific advancements as people tried to gain a technological advantage for their military. Many of these inventions or innovations were then applied to other uses.
It would have been better if Charles V had united Europe because it would have prevented wars such as the 30 Years' War and the 7 Years' War. Also later conflicts such as the two World Wars. These conflicts resulted in massive loss of life that would have been largely prevented had Charles V united Europe. The union of Europe would also have led to a decentralized state similar to the European Union or the USSR. There would have been also a much more rapid increase in European development of technology due to easier collaboration. The Pope and religions in general would have lost power. The Church wouldn't have held as much sway in foreign and internal relations in European powers. The time period following unification would have been similar to a Pax Romana, leading to the long-lasting peace throughout Europe. A unified Europe would have also been able to easily push back the Ottomans and keep Russia, Great Britain, and other regional powers in check. A unified Europe would have also been much more cosmopolitan with much more general intermingling and sharing of common traits of the people. It also would have probably shared a common currency and language.
Alright, Alex, you mentioned that there would have been less tolerance in Europe had Charles V united Europe. Would you care to elaborate on that?
Yes, thank you. The power of the Pope and the Church would have increased had Charles V united Europe because Charles was very Catholic and he fought wars against Protestant armies. He personally knew some of the popes and would not have easily abandoned the Catholic Church. His ancestors would most likely also would have stayed with the Catholic Church, and the Catholic Church would then have had so much power that they could have oppressed Protestants in all parts of Europe.
Henry, would you like to make a counterstatement?
I would. Charles was a very devout Catholic, but he also had his share of issues with the Vatican and German princes. Charles's main issue was religion, including the Ottomans threatening Austria, Moors in Spain, and Protestants in Germany. His plan was to create a unified Catholic Germany, but as soon as he was about to defeat the Protestant princes, his allies in France and the Vatican deserted him, fearing that his empire would grow too large. If Charles had known better, he would have just deserted the Vatican and created a tolerant union with the princes in France. I realized that at this time it probably wasn't that easy to put religion aside, but that was the only way it could be done. This way, the Pope would have fallen into obscurity as religions were no longer an issue.
Okay, now let's talk about technology. Alex, would you like to go first this time?
Had Charles V united Europe, science would not have progressed as far as it has. Many technologies have been born because of military competition, such as GPS and the internet. Had Europe unified, there would have been less scientific advancements because during the Enlightenment era, because there would have been less military competition because Europe would have been fighting less advanced nations and they would have been able to overpower them with the technology available to them because they had other advantages such as the number of people available to fight in their armies and the wealth of Europe. Europe was the primary source of new technology and scientific knowledge during the Enlightenment and Renaissance, and had Europe not progressed so far scientifically, the rest of the world would have fallen behind as well.
Henry, would you care to make a counterstatement?
Yes. I think that unifying Europe would have progressed technology, because the unification would have created a common language, leading to easier scientific collaborations and increased technological output. It's possible that innovation due to competition may have slowed. That just means that someone somewhere else in the world would have discovered it. Besides, Europe was so far ahead in technology at this point that it didn't really matter. This is at the very beginning of the European colonial empires, which already controlled the entire Western Hemisphere and a good amount of the Eastern. They had the technological advantages and would continue to improve them and keep them.
Now, if Charles had unified Europe, would there have been more or less internal conflict? Henry, you may begin.
There definitely would have been less conflict in Europe. I think Charles would have organized his empire like the Roman Empire, making himself dictator while instituting the standard culture, currency, language, and religion. He definitely had the army and the resources to do this. Rebellions would have been virtually non-existent due to the decentralized government with local administrators underneath Charles. Not only mentioning the internal revolts, but future wars like the 7 Years' War and World Wars could have been entirely avoided. Charles would have had a complete hegemony over the region, keeping it under his thumb.
Alex, would you like to make a counterstatement?
Yes, I disagree with Henry. I think that while wars such as the 7 Years' War would have been prevented, it would not have mattered because there would have been more rebellions. At this point, Europe was so diverse that there would have inevitably been conflicts between groups, mostly Protestants and Catholics. There would have been more conflict between these groups because if Europe had unified, minorities could not have run to other countries that were more tolerant of their religion. Also, Charles already faced many rebellions during his reign, and he was struggling to handle them even without controlling France and the rest of Italy, which probably would have been hotspots of rebellion because of the French hatred of the Habsburgs. One example of a rebellion is the rebellion of the Comuneros in Spain, which was a rebellion against Charles because he was not a Spaniard. This shows that there was already a sense of nationalism and national pride in Europe that would have resulted in many rebellions.